Right, let's start today's session. In the last session, we were discuss about complete Django installation process and how to work with Django application. We were discuss. In today's session, I'm going to show you Django MVT architecture, how it will work, and also I'll show you how to configure the URL clearly. So let's start today's session. In the last session, I just discussed about the Django project and setting files and everything. First, we need to go with PyCharm Professional Editor. We have to open our existing project. Let's see how to open our existing project. So just I'm opening our existing project. Just go to File menu. So go to File menu and open option. So once you click on open, so you have to select the Django project folder. So I created Django project folder, that is 9 p.m. Django 9 p.m. and you can expand it. And the project folder is Django project 9 p.m. And you can select this project folder and click on this window. And you will be able to see this Django project 9 p.m. folder, which we handled in the last lecture along with my application clearly. So let me change the background theme for clear visibility. So let's go for settings, appearance and behavior, and click on appearance. And you will be able to see the high contrast theme, but let me go with light theme. You can expand it. So Windows 10 light. So once you do this, Windows 10 lines is going to be affected here. Okay, let me change this. File and settings. High contrast instead of I'm taking Windows light. When we click on OK, Windows light is affected here clearly. This is about Django appearance settings application. And in this, so we have project level folders and application level files also will be there. So admin.py, apps.py, modules.py, test.py, use.py. Let me show you. And all the database configuration also we have included in the last lecture. You can see this database. And you can expand main. And once you right click on main folder and refresh it, you will be able to get by default 12 tables for every Django project. So now today's session, what I'm trying to do, I would like to explain the MVT architecture. But before MVT architecture explanation, so look at this in the terminal window. We are in C drive, but actually we need to go with our own virtual environment. What's our own virtual environment? You know, that is MyEnv, which we created in the last lecture. To activate virtual environment, you just double dot backslash virtual environment name is MyEnv slash scripts slash active. This is once we activate the virtual environment, so you are under in your virtual environment, that is MyEnv. The users computer name desktop Django 9 p.m. folder Django project 9 p.m. So we need to start run server here. The moment when we start run server, you can see Python space manage.py run server. We run the server and we got the output clearly here. Now you can see, click on this, we got this output clearly. Once we get this, the installed worked successfully, congratulations. That means you are working with Django project successfully. Now today I'm going to explain the MVT architecture step by step. And in terminal window, if you want to go back to your path, Control C. And do you want to clear the screen? CLS. And we can start the server. But before that, today I'm going to introduce how MVT architecture will work and how to create a view and how to execute the view and how to work with the different views, different application views clearly. So note this point. Let's go to MVT architecture diagram. How MVT architecture is going to be work. I would like to show you in diagrammatic representation. So this is MVT architecture diagram, sir. In Django, there is a MVT architecture diagram is there. Let me explain about this diagram first. So after that, we'll go through practically. So closely observe here. This is exactly MVT architecture diagram. See, as I said that Django is completely web application development framework. We can develop web applications using Django framework, but Django is completely written in Python language. So to know about Django, compulsory we have to know about Python language. If you don't know about Python, then no need to go with Django. So now coming to this. And in the last lecture, I explained that Django is completely client server architecture. That means client will send request to the server and server will process client request and give the response to the client only. So here you can see user will send request to Django server. Django server immediately can identify the URL. What is URL? Uniform Resource Locator. Once the URL through, if you provide URL configuration, using URL through, we can recognize the view. So if at all view is trying to communicate with the database and it will communicate with model. I said that in MVT pattern, model represent database. If view wants to get the data from database, we can collect the data from database and that database data will send it to a template. But in today's lecture, I'm not going to discuss about models. I'm not going to discuss about templates. I'm only discussing about views. So user will send request to the server. Server can identify the URL and URL through we can recognize the view. View is nothing but Python logic. Completely Python logic will execute and that logic will give return response to the user only. So that I'm trying to show you. Observe carefully. So let's go to your project here. I'm just flipped to project and now you can see every Django project is having one application. The application is nothing but what this is my app. This my app is already included when I create Django project. Okay, but this my app makes sure that we have to include in settings.py file. In settings.py file under installed app, you have to configure your application is what my app only. So this is the thing. So let's close this and now we can go to Django project 9 p.m. and we have my app here. Now currently I'm working with my app. So let's go to view here. I'm going to write view logic. So first time I'm writing in this batch. So view logic here. So it shows clearly views can be created here only, sir. Look at this, views are creating here from Django dot shortcuts import render. But we are not going to use any render method right now. So we'll show you only HTTP response. The moment when we go to view, here it is saying that create your views here. We have to create a view. So how to create a view? I'm trying to create right now views using Python functions. So you know that view is nothing but Python logic. So I'm trying to define the Python function. So suppose I'm taking df v1 is my function name and every function in the view should have the basic first parameter request object. So df v1 is view name, request is parameter. In the return response, when we execute v1 view function and what response you need to get. So that response I'm giving HTTP response. But look at this, HTTP response is a class. But the moment when we write HTTP response class, So it is showing underline red squiggly, that is error. You don't know this class is present in which library. You just simply right click, place mouse pointer over it, and you can import DJANGO HTTP response library. The moment when we hit this link, automatically from django.http import HTTP response. Or else if you know how to import the library for getting HTTP response class, you can try to add manually. How to try to add manually? Simple. From django.http import HTTP response. From django.http import HTTP response. And so automatically HTTP response class is coming. In the return response, what message you want, you can see this. I'm just writing the statement. This is my first view. This is my first view. So this is my first view. I'm giving in the return response when we execute this v1. But note this point, when we execute this v1, so we will get HTTP response through, we get the message called this is view v1 only. At my point. So whenever I try to use this v1 function calling, we get HTTP response. This is my first view. But generally in Python language I'm speaking, when we create a function, when we call the function, you will get response. But this view is executed by DJANGO server. So DJANGO request means what? HTTP request. Response means what? HTTP response. So in a response, when we execute v1, we have to get this response. This is my first view. But how to execute this v1 in the URL section? According to this diagram, you can see as a user, I'm sending request to the DJANGO server. Once I start DJANGO project server, you will get a link called http:127.0.0.1:8000. That is the port number along with IP address. When I click on that link, automatically DJANGO server will identify the URLs. Where is URLs exactly? In project level. Look at this urls.py, where is there? Do you want to execute this v1? We need to set the URL for this v1. So where is the URLs are? In every application, there is no urls.py. But urls.py, where it is present? In the project level. In DJANGO project 9 PM, urls.py is there. Double click on urls.py. Look at this. By default, the URLs are available here from django.contrib import admin. From django.urls import path. You can see URL patterns equal to admin URL name is there, admin.site.url. But I want to use my application URLs. So in this application, we have a view that is called views. This views is clearly having v1 view. Once, if you want to execute this v1 view to get the response from the server HTTP response, this is my first view, then we need to configure your application URLs here. But your application is having views. How to collect the views from the application my app into DJANGO project URLs here means we have to import your application views. How to do from? What is your application name? My app. What you want to import? Views. Because my views are present in views.py file. So I'm importing my app import views. In this views, what view is there? v1. To execute this v1, we need to set the URL. So I'm setting the URL here. Look at this path. If I don't give any URL name, views.v1. Yes, I'm giving views.v1. Note this point. So we have built-in URL name in the project level admin. I'll talk about this admin URL later. So this is administrative panel visiting purpose. We use admin, but there is no URL name or endpoint or resource name. So basically, when I start DJANGO server, when I hit the link, automatically it will call v1 view. So there is no URL name. The priority will give to this v1 view only if there is no URL name. Views dot v1. In this v1, immediately views dot v1 means views are coming from where? My app. In the my app views, what view is there? v1. When we execute this v1 in the return response, what output you will get? My first. This is my first view. Let's start the server and check this once. To start the server, Python space manage.py run server. The moment when I click on this blue link, so look at this in the return response, what we got. This is my first view only. But note this point, this is my first view. It is coming in very small size. Do you want to increase the size? Then we can include into H1 section. H1 is like HTML code, and H1 code is going to be takes place H1 open bracket close, that means close tag. Now you can go to your browser and refresh this, and you will be able to see this in the H1 section. This is my first view. So the moment when we start the server, you will be able to get the link here. What this is. When we hit this link, directly it will go to project level URLs. In the URLs, what URL is don't have any name of the URL. This is automatically it will call from views.v1. So v1 means what? v1 is coming from views. Views are coming from my app. It will go to my app views folder. This v1 will execute in the HTTP response. This is my first view. We got the output in the notice in that terminal browser window. So what happened if I try to create one more view in this application? Look at this. My view name is what, v2. So this is my second view I'm taking. This is my second view. The moment when we include one more view in the my application views folder, so two views are there. For every view, we need to set the URL. So in the project level URLs, I have included v1 view, but whenever I try to include one more view, if I do like this path space views dot v2. So now you can see the priority will give here two views are there, v1 and v2, but both views are don't have any URL name. If both views are don't have any URL name, the priority obviously will go to v1 view. So once we go to v1 view, now we can see when I run this, only this is my first view we are getting. That means what? We are getting only first view priority. The reason is why. So we have included in the URL address v1, there is no URL name, v2, there is no URL name. So what I need to do if I want to execute v2? So first we need to give v2, and then later we need to give v1. But this is not good practice. Now this time you can see when we restart the server and server is reloaded, when I hit this, this is my second view is coming. But will you do changes every time whenever you want to execute particular view in the URL section? No, that's not good idea. So I need what if you have multiple views in the same application, do you want to execute what view? Better to give the name of the view v1 slash. Any name you can give. This is called URL name or endpoint or resource. I'm taking v2 also here. This is also URL name or endpoint or resource. If I include v1, v1 will execute. If I go with v2, v2 will execute. This is very convenient way to execute the views. When I start run this, now you can see here I'm taking slash v1. So v1 is executing. In the URL address, I'm taking slash v2. v2 is executing. So which view do you want to run? So you have to execute like this. So in one application, when we are working with multiple views, okay. So when we are working with multiple views, so we got this output clearly. So it is user friendly and convenient way to execute the views. If you execute v1, v1 will execute. If you go for v2, v2 will execute in the same application. So this is way to include URL address in the view section clearly in DJANGO. So we have one application and two views. And in that case, I recommend to give the view names clearly. V1 means V1 will execute, V2 means V2 will execute. This name is the URL name. You can give any URL name as your wish. So this is what project level URLs I have handled clearly. So what happen if I try to go for admin view? See, the moment when I do go to here, restart the server, CLS, clear screen, and start the server here. To start the server, Python space manage.py run server. If I try to run this server, now you can notice this. When I hit this link, now you can see there is page not found 404. That means you have to hit the request. Either you can hit the request admin, or you can use the request v1, or you can use the request v2. Okay, admin or v1 or v2, anyone. So according to my requirement, I want to execute v1, so I can go for v1. If I want to execute v2, I can go for v2. But what happens are if I go for admin URL name, look at this, when I try to give admin URL name, so it will ask the username and password to visit administrative panel. So I'll talk about this administrative panel in upcoming session. The reason is, if you want to visit administrative panel, you need to create a super user. So it is asking username and password. Right now, I don't have username and password with me. So that's what I cannot able to give username and password. How I can get username and password is here, you have to create super user, sir. Super user means admin user. Yes, admin user. Every project, the admin user is clearly available, sir. You have to create the admin user. So how to create admin user? Look at this. So CLS I'm creating. To create admin user or super user, we need to pass the command like this. Python space manage.py create super user. Yes. Python space manage.py create super user. The moment when I hit this, it will ask the username to leave the blank as Mohan. Do you want to provide the username Mohan? You can leave the blank, but I don't want to provide the username is Mohan. So I would like to give the super user name is one of our student. That student I'm giving super user is Tarun. So for easy recognize, I used to provide my students' names only in this batch. Tarun is the super user. From now onwards, till the end of the sessions, our super user is Tarun. So Tarun username, and I'm giving the mail ID is tarun@gmail.com. So mail ID is not compulsory, just giving the mail ID, dummy mail ID, tarun@gmail.com. After that, it will ask the password. Password also I'm giving Tarun, but it will not print here. You can go with just Tarun type, and you can see the password is too similar to the username. This password is too short. It must contain at least 8 characters, it's saying. So bypass the password validation and create any user anyway. Then by you can press, and I would like to go to, now you can see super user created successfully. Once the super user created successfully, then you can see Python space manage.py run server. Now we can able to go to admin URL, and you can able to join with super user account. Previously, the moment when I try to give admin panel, now it will ask the super user administrative username and password. Just now I created one super user. The name is Tarun username, and password is also Tarun. So when I click on login, now you can see it's showing clearly, welcome to Tarun. It is same super user account. This is called administrative panel. So you just observe here, this is administrative panel. I'll talk about this administrative panel in the upcoming session in very great detail. Okay, but right now I don't need click on logout and close this window. But you may get doubt, sir, just now you created super user with along with username and password. That username and password, where it's saved. Do you want to show the username and password where it's saved? Yes, the super user details obviously will save in the particular database. Like you can see, go to database and expand tables. There are 12 tables are there here. And in this, the main administrative table is authentication underscore user. Once the moment when I right click on authentication underscore user table and look at this, right click on it and go to edit data, you'll be able to get the super user details here. The super user ID, only one user is there, ID number one. Password is in secured manner. Last login, the time is there. Is super user status, one means true. And username is Tarun. Last name I have not provided. Email is tarun@gmail.com. Is this user is having staff status account? Yes, means one. No means zero. Is active user? Yes. The date of joined this user, this is the date. First name of the user not provided. So the details of the super user always stored by default in one of the table of predefined tables authentication underscore user. You strictly remember this authentication underscore user table. We will be discuss more information about this auth underscore user table in upcoming session. So this is the way to work with admin panel here. So many of the students will get doubt what is admin. Admin is nothing but admin panel registration, admin panel login. So to go with admin panel account section, we have to create user, that is super user. I just created super user successfully with along with username and password. Same thing I use in the authentication system, username and password. I can able to visit administrative panel. But we created V1 view. V1 is executing clearly. According to this diagram, so user is sending request to the Django server. That means Python space manage.py we run server. Server is giving the link. When I hit the link, directly it will go to URL section. Along with URL, it will find the views. What view is need to be executed, that V1 we need to pause. That view will give response to the URL. URL will give response to the server. Server will give response to the return response. That is HTTP response. That is user will get that response clearly. Okay. So, but make sure that you are having only one application here. Look at this. We have a project called Django project 9 p.m. In this 9 p.m. project, how many applications do you have? Only one application I have. But can we add more than one application? Yes, why not? We can create any number of applications in Django project. Sir, what happened if I try to provide multiple applications in my Django project? Yes. So let's create one more application here. So right now we have handled with my app. I would like to handle with my app one. To create one more application, so you know that command Python space manage.py start app my app one. Make sure that the application name should be different. So I'm just creating a new application into my project Python space manage.py start app my app one. The moment when I hit this enter button, my app one is created successfully. So look at this, my app one is created successfully. Where do I need to check? Let's go to project folder and just click with mouse and automatically you can see my app one is created. You know very well in my previous lecture, I clearly discussed the moment when we create new application to your project, make sure that you must and should go to settings.py file and don't forget to inform to the Django server that we are sending request to my current application one, that is my app one. You must and should include the name of the new application under installed apps. This is mandatory. Okay. Otherwise, your request will not be recognized by the Django server from which application through you are sending request, like my app one. This is very important thing you have to notice. My app one through I'm sending request. Okay. Yes, I have included my app one. So Django project is nothing but it's called multiple applications, sir, not one application. So look at this right now. I'm creating Django project. I have created Django project 9 p.m. Until the end of the sessions of Django, I will maintain this project only completely with many applications. But what happens are if your application one also is having multiple views. Look at this. I'm defining one more view, v1 request. request. Okay, request. And I'm going to return HTTP response, but HTTP response will not come by default. Why? Because HTTP response will come from where? From django.http import HTTP response. Or else you can see simply, you can also do with after render HTTP response also. This will also work fine. Okay, so now I'm going to return HTTP response class. What response do you want to send? You can decide that. I'm just sending in the H1 request through. H1 is the HTML section. H1 is closing. In this, I want to send the responses, but this is V1 view, V1 view from what application? My app 1. Let's see this. I'm creating one more view, V2 request. And in the return response, what HTTP response. So that means H1 section and H1 section closing. So I'm saying that this is V2 view from my app 1. So this is V2 view from my app 1. This is V1 view from my app 1. Okay, so we have my app 1 views, and we are also having my app views. So I'm just setting this is V1 view from my app. This is V2 view from my app. So I have two applications. Just notice this point. So one DJANGO project, but we are having two applications. So, but we have configured in the URL section, I have configured only one application views only. Okay, if I configured one more application, look at this. From my app 1, we have one more application, import views. But look at this, what application views are activate by default? Recent application views. That means when I execute this project, when I hit this V1 view will coming from my app 1. Look at this, when I start server, Control C in the terminal, CLS, and start server, Python space manage.py run server. Once I run server, we got the view V1 view only. Look at this, when I try to slash V1, when I try to get slash V1, we will get V1 view from my app 1 only. When I go for V2 view from my app 1 only. But what about my app, sir? No, you cannot able to execute my app. When we can able to execute my app view, no? So whenever I try to give here my app 1, and when we go for my app, now we can see recent application only activate, one previous application is not activating. That means what? You will get V1 view from my app, V2 view from my app only. But we can't execute what, other application views. This is the problem we notice in the DJANGO. This is V1 view from my app, V2 view from my app. So either you can execute my app views or my app 1 views. But sir, what can I do? This is not good practice, because in our DJANGO project, we can maintain multiple applications, but every application we need to change like this, my app 1, my app 2 like this. No, this is not good practice to handle with this. So I can recommend what, when we deal with multiple applications and